Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this little guy. This is the Olight Baton Pro. An interesting little upgrade, and first off, before I go any further, I want to let you know this guy was sent to me directly by Olight. I've reviewed stuff by them on the channel before, and they reached out to me, said, hey Nick, we're doing this new model, the Pro version, do you want to take a look? I said, hey, sure, why not? Yeah, USB recharge lights are always interesting to me, and I know this is a very popular line with my viewers, so, I figured, why not? But I sent them, as always, my full disclaimer on my website, told them I'm going to talk about the good, the great, the bad, the ugly. It might be a gem, might be junk. They did still send it along. But nevertheless, we have to assume that A, this is the best quality controlled one of these guys ever, and B, I'm doing my best not to let that affect the quality or the integrity of my review. So, there you go. Thanks for Olight for that. Next thing, size comparison. This guy is not actually a huge light. Here it is against the ThruNite Neutron 2C, which is usually, it's one of the lights I generally recommend to folks. Here it is against the Olight, well, this is an Olight battery, but this is just a CR123, a rechargeable one, and here it is against a standard size 18650 battery. So there you go. Here it is against the TAC D25A, which is a double-edged light, or a double-edged light. Wow, you can tell I've been reviewing a lot of pocket knives. And then here it is against the Nitecore 10,000 lumens, which I only put on screen so I could say its name. Alrighty, so there you go. Then finally, one quick note. This is a newer version of a light I've reviewed before, the S2 Baton. I actually thought there was a lot more changed in this guy than it turned out to be. There were some nice changes, but for the most part, it really feels very iterative. And so, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do a full re-review because it's been a little while since I looked at the S2, and because the market has evolved a little bit. But nevertheless, if you're thinking, well, wow, that's not that different, well, no, really it isn't. So, anyways, let's go ahead and jump into the good, the great, the bad, the ugly of this very interesting little light right here. So on the good side, to start with, this guy has it's 4 modes. So you've got if you turn this guy on, it immediately goes into low, and then you can hold it medium, high, and there's actually mode memory. So if I turn it off, and then I turn it back on, it comes back into high. So that's kind of a good thing. But you also have a turbo mode. If I double-click, it immediately jumps into a 2,000 lumen turbo mode, and it stays in turbo for 2 minutes. For 1 minute, that is. It stays in turbo for 1 minute, until which point it will back itself down to the 600 lumen high mode. And the high mode lasts for about 3.5 hours, is what they're rating on the built-in battery. Medium mode is 120 lumens, which is 13 hours, which is actually a pretty good chunk of time. Low mode is about 30 lumens, 2 days and change, and then moonlight mode is 5 lumens, and you get 9 days worth of that. And I say the outputs on that are pretty damn good. They're competitive with what's coming out these days, and also the run times are pretty reasonable. I mean, 120 lumens for 13 hours, that'll get you through a night shift, especially even if you're using bouts of low and bouts, it'll tend to average out well. So, I wish there was maybe a little bit more even spacing between all your modes, but nevertheless, there's that. Next thing, this guy has a nice beam pattern to it. What we can see here, I'll turn it up a little bit more, hold it down, there we go. What we can see is there is some spot in the middle here, but there is also a fair amount of flood around it. I feel like it's a pretty good beam pattern. Actually, the reflector is very interesting. They've got sort of a frosted glass cylinder above the LED there, which allows it to be a relatively shallow head on it, but also gives it a pretty good, optically speaking, I'm actually pretty impressed with that guy. That's nice. And so that's good. Next thing, this guy is, it does have a lockout mode. If I hold down this button here, you'll see it just shut things off. And so now if I were to press this button again, whereas normally that would turn it on, instead it just turns on this little red LED that says, no, you doofus, it's in lockout mode. The way that you turn out the lockout mode is, unfortunately, by holding that button down again, and now you can see it's turned back on, but still, it does have that. It also has a hardware lockout mode, where normally I press this button, it turns on, but if I untwist it very slightly, no longer can you do anything to turn this guy on. And given that you can, given that the lockout is turned off by, holding down the button, that might be the one I'm tempted to use more often. But anyways, it's nice that it's there. Next thing, it's got a clip here that's actually pretty decent. Not only does it provide plenty of spring here, but it is also it can hold this light upside down or right side up. And the way that it's mounted actually makes this guy very easy to clip to the side of your hat or your Batman mask or something like that, which makes it very easy to have this guy on something serving as a headlamp, even though it really isn't a headlamp. The other thing that I'll highlight is that the clip here is sort of fixed in position. I can't rotate this around the light, although it looks like you could take it off if you wanted to. But actually, that's not a bad thing because it indexes the button position. If you grab this light, you know that the button is exactly opposite the clip. So if you always make sure that your finger ends up right here, then you always know that your thumb is going to end up on the button. That's kind of a nice thing, and given that these buttons aren't that prominent, having that clip there serving as an indexing, that's pretty good. So I like that a fair amount. Next thing, this guy has very nice texture to it. You can see it's sort of a crenellation sort of approach. It's not too sharp, but it's also relatively, it's easy in the hand, and coupled with the clip on here, this guy's not going anywhere. This is a pretty solid light in terms of texture. That's good. Next thing, the interface on this guy is very simple. You click it once and it turns on, and that's very reliable. I can hand this flashlight to anybody, and they know that, okay, I click it, it turns on, I click it again, it turns off, and then you can say if you want more modes, you just hold it down, and it'll cycle through those modes. That's kind of a good thing. So a simple interface can be a very nice thing, particularly for people who are a little less flashlight aware, so to speak. And then you also do get the option of a strobe disco mode. So, for instance, if I do 3 clicks, sorry about that. You can see that it turned on a full-on strobe mode. I like the fact that, for some people, that's considered a self-defense thing. And, I can see it in some circumstances. But more importantly, the fact that you can get to it very easily. There are lights out there that really, they've got the strobe mode, but it's such a pain to get into it. Like, if you're actually in a panic, that ain't happening. So if they're going to do it, I like that it's easily accessible, but it's also very hard to do accidentally. And so that's a good way to go about doing that. Next thing, this does use this does have an option of different bases. You have like hanging bases. You have this guy. We'll talk more about the recharging in a second, but this is how the light recharges, using this little base here at the bottom, and then it just grabs onto there. There's also a desktop version that actually lets you set the, where it's designed with let the light basically tail stand on the charger. That's kind of a good thing. I like the approach of having a magnetic base there. We'll talk about some of the downsides of a proprietary base later on, but it's a thing. Then finally, the fact that it is using a side switch is very good ergonomically speaking. Unless you are holding the light in this way, where you might want a back switch, I do appreciate side switch lights, and especially with easy indexing based on this clip, that's nice. So to me, all that is the good, is that it's got a side switch here. The magnetic base thing is actually kind of compelling in some ways. It has a disco mode with 3 clicks. It has a super simple interface, good texture, a multi-clip sort of affair, so you can clip it either direction, and it has a nice beam pattern and a pretty good output. On the great side, it's rechargeable. I am getting really, really, really tired of lights that make me recharge batteries on my own. I get totally 100% that there's some benefit in reduction of complexity. Actually, Prometheus Lights, Jason Hui over there, did a video recently that I agree with in every way, shape, and form, where he basically made a case against, built-in lights with built-in recharging capabilities. I think he happens to be wrong. But the argument generally is just that, it's more complexity built in the light itself. I think for most people, though, that's a really good idea. And not having to take the light apart, not having to pull out the battery, not leaving yourself the option to take the battery out and then charge the battery and then clip it and then end up grabbing the light empty or forgetting to do that, it's really, really nice. And so if I were a night shift person, I could see very, very easily just coming home at the end of the night and just tossing this guy at my desk, and it will probably land and it will probably charge. That is the one nice advantage of this kind of charging approach, is it is just so damned easy to use and to plug in, and then this turns red, and then when it turns green, it's charged. That's a nice thing. So the fact that you've got the dock option, this is just a really nice light if you plan to be recharging it every damn day. And so if you are a first responder type who's using your light all the time and wants charging to be completely frictionless, this might be a better approach, and it's certainly a better approach than the lights that make you, recharge your own batteries in docks and things like that. So, to me at least, that's what's great here, is it is rechargeable, and there is a certain ease of use that this kind of dock does afford. On the bad side, to start with, the price on this guy, it's not amazing. It's $89 at MAP. That's a little higher than I'd like to see, and a lot of the competition's coming in lower than that these days. Olight is definitely, we'll say they're getting to be a market leader, and I think they're getting a little confident as a result, but yeah, that's not going to last them so long. It is also another black flashlight. I don't particularly love the fact that flashlights are made jet black, because when do you need one in the dark? What does it look like dark? Okay. They do offer a blue version, though, for $10 more. Whatever. Okay. Next thing, the tone of light isn't amazing. It's not terrible. I definitely have had some, like, okay, Through Night is a company that I like a lot, but you can see even right now that the tone on the Olight is much more even, whereas this guy has, but I'm still not a huge fan. I'm kind of a tint snob, and so I would much prefer something with a good old, yeah, like a Nichia emitter or something like that. In terms of color rendering, not amazing, but then now I'm nitpicking. Next thing, one thing I did actually forget to mention is that this guy has a magnetic base to it. It's a strong magnetic base. So I can put this guy, you know, anything is going to be attracted to the back of this guy. And in fact, I don't have anything really big and magnetic handy to me. But the thing is, like, I was able to, like, slap this to the side of my car and it just stayed there. And it broadcasted light, or shined, I suppose is the technical term in the English. Anyways, I digress. I do like the ability to have that magnet there because that can be occasionally useful. However, and it is required for the USB part, magnets can be a little dangerous, especially with things like mechanical watches or, you know, storage media, things like that. Not necessarily an amazing thing. Next thing, I mentioned already the lockout. The lockout unlocks itself automatically if you press something down and hold it against it. Not the end of the world because it's got the hardware thing, but it's definitely a thing. Next thing, and one thing that bothers me a little bit more, is this is an 18650 light. And in fact, they put on the side of the battery here 18650. But if we compare this to other 18650s, yeah, this is a much smaller light. Now, flashlight batteries are a circle of hell. I mean, seriously, if you look up Dante's, you know, Inferno, you will see right there flashlight batteries. That's like, I think, 6.5 right there. Because all of them, even though they use these numbers, they're not standardized. And the question of whether it's a button cell versus a, you know, shoot me, okay, guy? Don't, please. I got lots of gear left to review. Anyways, I digress. The fact, though, is that if I use a conventional 18650 cell, that is a little bit shorter, this guy doesn't work. And that is actually frustrating. It means that you're probably going to end up wanting to buy a couple of these guys if you ever find yourself with need of a spare battery. So I'm not a big fan of the fact that, although it is an 18650 light, it is not really well resilient to smaller varieties of 18650. Mind you, as a rechargeable, but still, guys, you can do a little better than that. Next thing, this is a time-based interface. You have good shortcuts. You can keep it on to low, you can double-click the turbo, and you can triple-click the disco mode. But the fact is, if you're trying to switch between things, generally it's going to come on to wherever it was last time, and then you'll have to hold down to get the right sort of brightness you're after here. And if we compare this to an interface that's, well, better, for instance, a rotary interface, where you can rotate exactly the amount of light that you need at any given moment, I really love rotaries. And time-based interfaces are slower, as well as a little less accurate. But whatever, that's a nitpick. And then finally, the other thing is that this side switch is a little easy to trigger in the pocket because, well, you have the clip is directly opposite that. So anytime that this presses, your pocket presses this up against you, it's going to trigger this switch here. So you're going to want to make sure that you've locked it out using the lockout mode, either hardware or software, before you throw this guy in your pocket. And that's something that's not necessarily ideal. This guy, having the sort of construction that it does with the switch being relatively prominent, as opposed to something like this where it has a collar around the outside of it. You can see there the difference. This is very hard to turn on accidentally. This one is relatively easy to. So do keep that around. Do keep that in mind, that is. And so to me, all of that is the bad, is that the side switch is pretty easy to trigger in the pocket. It is a time-based interface, which tend to be slower. It has an 18650 battery that is non-standard and expects non-standardness. Lockout mode can happen naturally. Magnets can be a little problematic for some things. The light tone isn't amazing. It's another black flashlight, and the price, although is fine, it's not super high value. I'd like to see him pushing in that way. On the ugly front, so this is going to be biased, 100%. In fact, I'm going to do a whole video that this review inspired, but I really dislike proprietary screws, proprietary charges, proprietary anything. And so I fully acknowledge that for some people, actually, this is going to be a great thing. Having that flexibility to just kind of throw this guy on and have it land someplace, there is a lot of joy in this system here. But I dislike the fact that they have made the entire cable proprietary rather than just the charging head. I really don't care for having fixed-length cables that are tied to a very specific charging standard. I wish, you know, so many people right now are using micro USB or USB, whether on the battery or on the light itself, which is always going to be chargeable. You can be anywhere. You can be sitting in an airport and recharge that guy with just the cable that they've got at the little freaking kiosk there, whereas this, not that you're recharging your light at an airport, maybe you are, I don't know your life. But anyways, whereas with this guy, you need to have this cable or you will not be able to do a damn thing. This bothers me a little bit in a couple of ways. I mean, it's nice that you've got this option here for the snappy-on, but what I'd love to see, actually, is maybe this becomes a little bit thicker, but they actually have a USB-C port right on the side of this, or a USB, micro USB, whatever. And if you want to include a proprietary a cable that you can unplug, that just leaves USB there that, you know, clips on or something like that, feel free. But I'd like to have the option to just leave this thing attached to the back of the light. That way I can always charge wherever I am, and any USB cable I have allows me to do the cool little dongle charge thing. You know, I'd like to at the very least see that as an option. They do offer a dock for this guy. It's a $9 little dock that has a USB port on the side of it and allows you to just drop the light on that way. And that gives you the option to use a longer cable length than they give you. But I'm going to be honest, I don't know, the proprietary thing bugs me a fair amount. But I feel like having a non-proprietary port in the side of this thing so it can just remain on the light when you're using it, that would kind of be win-win, and it would also protect this back part, which could, in theory, short out if something goes across there. So I'd love to see them move to a USB-based little puck here that works with any USB cable, rather than making me carry around another proprietary cable in my life when those just anger me so much. Like I said, call this bias. You're welcome to, or even a conventional wireless charging standards. But that's one of the bigger weaknesses this guy has relative to other lights. I can throw one of these guys in my pack, and if I need to recharge it wherever I am, I can go on ahead and do that just using a USB cable, whereas this guy, I am throwing yet another thing into my everyday life, and I don't know that I need to. So, there you go. That's, to me, ugly, as I don't care for proprietary cables, even though this one has a couple of perks, just not quite doing it for me. Final conclusions here. I think this is a really fine light. I mean, it's good brightness, good run times, a nice beam, standard battery, a decent clip, and a pretty easy charging setup. I mean, frictionless-wise, that's pretty frictionless. And so there is a lot to like about it. It is also black with a light tone that's not stellar. It's a weird lockout. It's a time-based interface. It's an easy switch, and it's using a proprietary cable. And again, you can get them in blue, just saying. But, you know, I want to really highlight that bias, though. There are very few things in the world that bug me more than proprietary cables, and more so proprietary standards. I tend to be an open source guy. I tend to be an open information guy. And so anything proprietary bothers me. And so I think this is something that bothers me more than I think it's going to bother you. Keep that in mind. But my feelings as a result, though, are kind of neutral here. It's a nice light. It's bright. It's easy to use. And I think it would recharge well. And I think for most people who don't have my ideological standards, it's probably going to be a very nice choice for them. But, you know, I do wish they could get the price down. And I definitely wish they could be an onboard USB of some variety or another here. But overall, I guess my final conclusion here is that the Pro is absolutely fine. If you've got an S2 Baton, unless you need more brightness, I think you're probably good to go. This is about where you need to be. And if you need the quick charge, then this is definitely something to consider. Not the quick charge, but the quick attach charge. This would be something to consider. But for everybody else, you know what? There are so many fish in the sea, and especially at that kind of price range, you can get a lot of really amazing lights. Well, in a lot of different kind of situations. So anyways, there you go. Interesting light, and I'm certainly biased in a couple of ways, but there you go. Hopefully they work on getting a... Oh, that'd be awesome down here. And mostly, I hope that you all have yourselves just an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.